think I'm very good at turning away from things that I think are no longer good for me.
I'm great at quitting.
Yeah,
I love quitting.
I love quitting.
I quit all the time. It's like we're friends or something.
I know.
My name is Carson. I'm here with my friend Hyeree. Back in the fall of 2018, we started in the same grad program at the same time, a continuous master's to PhD English Lit program. And I finished my PhD just in the fall of 2024. And Hyeree left the program a couple years before that, year and a half before that.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that today. In this video, we're going to talk about the choice to quit versus not to quit the PhD and kind of just our experiences in academia from undergrad majors, choice to do the PhD, what we researched during the PhD, and just kind of general academia stuff.
Just our experiences in the grad program, what led us there, what ultimately made us leave or stay.
Right. Yeah. And how we made money during it, because people want to know that.
Money is always important. That's the most important thing. No, I'm just kidding. It's not.
Okay. Preview of why Hyeree left the program. So we're going to start with undergrad. So why don't you start with what your major was as an undergrad?
So I double majored in English, literature, and sociology. And I was also an honor scholar, which was a really pivotal experience for me in wanting to pursue grad school. So in the honor scholar program, we had to form a committee and it had to be interdisciplinary. So it had to be from professors from at least, I want to say 2 to 3 departments. And the committee could be anywhere from 3 to 4 professors. And then we had to produce a thesis length manuscript that we ultimately had to defend to our committee.
It's very similar to grad
school. So it's very similar to grad school. And the defense was, I want to say, 3 hours long.
That's more than mine was.
Was it really?
My PhD defense was only 2 hours long.
Okay.
And like really it was an hour and a half.
It was technically a minor, but I was 1 credit away from being a Spanish major. Right. So I went abroad to Argentina and I did research. It was sociological qualitative research. And I had to produce, again, another thesis length manuscript. I did some old English research, actually, a little preview, a little foreshadow with a professor. I had a lot of opportunities. I was really grateful for opportunities and for professors to open up research accounts for me. So having essentially 3 different opportunities to do research really convinced me that I could do grad school or that I wanted to do grad school.
For me, I had none of that interdisciplinary stuff in undergrad. My major was writing, literature, and publishing. And so I was doing mostly literature because that was where my interests were lying at that point. But I chose the writing, literature, and publishing program because I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do kind of a traditional, just straight literature, academia forever career. And this program offered me opportunities to take courses in book and magazine publishing. And I did a lot of creative nonfiction writing and writing for magazines. I interned at a literary agency and I just hated everything other than the literature stuff. I was just like, I took the publishing classes and I was like, oh, this is business. I don't like business. I like books. And so I started taking more and more classes that were in early modern English lit. We both knew already what like time periods and literature we were interested in, but I know for me, I wasn't 100% sure about pursuing grad school yet. Were there other like fields or career paths that you considered other than grad school before you applied?
I briefly considered, and I think even at the time I knew this was like panic response while I was applying to grad school, and the application process is so tumultuous in a lot of ways, like emotionally, financially, so expensive, and there was just a lot going into each application. I had a panic response and I was like, should I do TFA, Teach for America? And I openly talked about this with my advisor and she actually told me not to do it. She was like, you are panicking, like you're ready for grad school, don't worry. But that was the only thing I really considered.
For me, the decision to do grad school, I made a little bit more gradually, pun intended, because you went straight from undergrad to grad school. You applied as a senior and then you went into grad school. I felt pretty sure when I finished undergrad that I was going to go into grad school. I accidentally finished undergrad a semester early because I had more credits than I realized. And so I was like, that decision-making point of being done with undergrad happened sooner than I thought. I only found out like a semester in advance, and I was like, oh my God, I'm already gonna be finishing, and I didn't feel ready for grad school. And I really wasn't sure about committing to like the long haul of a PhD. So I decided to take, I thought maybe it would be a year to kind of save up some money and just figure out whether after a year post undergrad, I still wanted to do the PhD. And I figured if I still want to do it, then I really do want to do it. And so I'll do it. And it ended up being more like 3 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, because I got a job as a baker at this really cool bakery that was just desperate for help. And so they hired me with no work experience. And it was a great job. I loved it. And I was really happy doing that. And so that made me also keep reconsidering like, okay, I'm really happy living in Somerville, Massachusetts, working full-time as a baker, part-time, like playing folk music in a little band at local clubs. Like, is this what I want to be doing instead? Do I want to just be, you know, pursuing whatever this would lead me to rather than doing grad school? And ultimately, I missed academic work, and I still was really passionate about the idea of doing the PhD. And also that job gave me multiple repetitive stress injuries that I still deal with today. And so it wasn't going to be sustainable in the long run. And so I decided to go to grad school. I think I applied to 12 programs, which was so expensive. It's like $100
at least
per application. So good thing I'd been saving that money. And I got rejected from almost all of them. I got waitlisted as a couple. I got deferred to the master's program for one, which meant that I would have had to be paying and then would have the opportunity to apply for the PhD after the master's. And I just was not interested in that. So I ended up going to the only school that offered me a full admittance to the master's PhD continual program with funding provided through working for teaching. And so it was ultimately a very easy decision for me of where to go to school because nobody else wanted me.
So unlike Carson, I actually started the application process as a senior in undergrad. And I don't necessarily recommend that because as a senior, you have a lot going on. I essentially was writing 3 capstone projects, 3 very long manuscript length research projects on top of also doing grad school applications. And I also think I applied to, I want to say 11 or 12 programs, and they were all PhD programs. I knew I wanted to go back to back from undergrad straight into PhD because in the United States, PhD programs often come with some sort of funding, whether that's through like TA-ships, RA-ships, or just like merit-based scholarships. I think I always knew that I wanted to go to grad school to be an English professor, and that wasn't necessarily a lucrative track, and I didn't want to go into a lot of student loan debt. I was accepted to 3 right off the bat with funding, and then I was waitlisted at 1, and I received a master's offer to another program.
As a person with options, how did you make your choice?
When I was trying to make my decision, I was really looking at the people, and I think the most obvious sort of people would be looking at your faculty to see if there was anyone that could advise you and if these are the type of people that you'd want to learn from and learn with.
Which is important. Like that's how I chose my list of programs as well, was by looking at faculty pages and seeing research specialties, because that is an important part of the people element.
Definitely. And I would say look beyond your department as well, because more than likely you will be doing interdisciplinary research, whether that's through a certificate program or something even a little bit more relaxed. So I was definitely looking at professors who were doing all different types of theory, especially critical race theorists, a lot of gender theorists, but I was also looking at my potential cohort. I was very aware during the tour of trying to meet a lot of people, trying to see who I would ultimately could potentially study with for 7 years.
It's a long commitment.
It's a long commitment. And I wanted to be somewhere where I wanted to be in a culture that wasn't going to be super competitive. Somewhere where I could thrive in a culture that was very collaborative. And I also didn't want to be the only pre-modern scholar, right? Like I really wanted to be with other early modern students, medieval students would have been good too.
And that brings us to 2018 when we had both committed to the same school, Big Ten, Midwestern college town. in that first semester when we were first like becoming friends, I do think that what you were just saying about not wanting to be too competitive is one of the things that drew us together as like-minded people in terms of grad school and also other things.
Yeah.
But that like we both had, I think from the beginning, a clear idea of grad school as a job, and we were here as colleagues and hopefully eventually, yes, as friends, but that we are not here to be nasty and competitive, and that work-life balance is important and all those kinds of things. Do you want to talk just like quickly about what our research specialties were?
In grad school,
Yeah.
I pursued medieval literature as a specialization. So that was early English literature. And I was kind of at the in-between between Old English and Middle English literature. So if anyone is interested in medieval, I think that will speak in terms of time. But also I was very interested in pre-modern globality. So I was looking at learning some other languages as well. So in the medieval program, you have to learn Latin, medieval Latin, so not just classical Latin, Old English, Middle English. And I believe we also have to have a total of 3 research languages. So I was learning Old French, took some classes in like medieval Italian. All that to say, although I was in an English department, I think I took a very global look at my research, and I was really interested in studying the non-human through a couple of different lenses, through critical race theory, but also through animal studies as well. So I had a lot of different research interests. Towards the end of coursework, I ultimately narrowed down what sort of theory and schools of thought I wanted to focus on. And those were affect theory, critical race theory within the larger context of medieval English literature.
And for my research, I was early modern English period. So that's like 1500s, 1600s. We're time period neighbors.
Yes.
And I started off with research interest mostly in food studies in literature of this time. I didn't want to leave all the baking stuff all behind. So I was interested in, food studies. Gender was a part of that because of domestic labor, food production practices, things like that all get rolled in together. And then over the first couple years of the program, my interest shifted more into hospitality, which again is a pretty natural rollover. So research interests definitely do evolve, but for sure we were both set on our time period from the beginning, and that didn't change. But you just kind of, over the course of taking classes and working more and more with advisors, new things come up and it shifts a little bit.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, this sounds so stupid, but I didn't have any goals or like career pathway lined up for myself when I started. So the program that we were in together is called a continuous master's to PhD program. And so that meant that the first 2 years of the program were the master's degree. And then after those 2 years, you got to internally reapply. So after the end of the second year, you were awarded your master's degree if you had completed everything, and did an internal reapplication, which I think was just a couple letters of recommendation from faculty.
It was very much a formality.
Yes.
It wasn't really an application. Yeah.
It was the kind of thing where they told us nobody ever fails this, because if you're going to fail, people will have already talked to you about the fact that you're not making the progress you should be. So it was a couple letters of recommendation and a statement of purpose for what you wanted to specialize in continuing into the PhD section. So at the start of this program, I had my research interests. I was really excited to be going back to school, really passionate about literature, all of that, but I really didn't have any career goals or anything like that.
In a very charismatic way, though.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, like, you weren't just like floating by. Like, you
right.
very intentionally, I think, were open to a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, is that I didn't want to overplan because I already knew from myself. I was 24. I